be off at the moment.
There we are, on now. I felt like the State of the Union Association. I walked through the crowd shaking hands with everyone. Something like that, anyway. So, yeah, it's great. It's been great, hasn't it, folks, to be together these last couple of days. And for me personally, it's just lovely to see all of you again, actually. That's been, for me, the best thing of all, really. And I've missed it. I really have. I'm going to read from the scriptures, and I'm going to read from 1 Kings chapter 18. I'm using the New Living Translation. Okay, sorry. I wanted to use this translation, but if you've got it on your iPad or phone, do turn to it. 1 Kings 18 from verses 41 to 46. Then Elijah said to Ahab, "Go get something to eat and drink, for I hear a mighty rainstorm coming." So Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel and bowed low to the ground and prayed with his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, "Go and look out towards the sea." The servant went and looked, then returned to Elijah and said, "I didn't see anything." 7 times Elijah told him to go and look. Finally, the 7th time, his servant told him, "I saw a little cloud about the size of a man's hand rising from the sea." Then Elijah shouted, "Hurry to Ahab and tell him, 'Climb into your chariot and go back home. If you don't hurry, the rain will stop you.'" And soon the sky was black with clouds. A heavy wind brought a terrific rainstorm, and Ahab left quickly for Jezreel. Then the Lord gave special strength to Elijah. He tucked his cloak into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to the entrance of Jezreel. I like that bit. Let's pray, shall we? Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. The Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. As I've already said in these last couple of days, and I've said previously, whenever given the chance to do so, I would want to pay tribute once again to your enduring perseverance and diligent ministry throughout the challenges of the last 2 years. I am deeply proud of our team, and we are a team. If you're anything like me, the memories of a different era which existed before March 2020, in the era of before coronavirus, BC, as we called it, it seems like a faraway land these days, doesn't it? We didn't have the cares that perhaps we carry now. And the remarkable efforts you've all gone to keep the show on the road, of which you've managed to do so by God's grace, upskilling, creating new ways of gathering, becoming online communities, caring for the bereaved, for very anxious people in our congregations, coping with restrictions on our freedoms, singing or not singing, to be or not to be, ticketing, who would have thought it, ticketing for church, one-way systems, amazing efforts. And this often at the cost of your own well-being too. Many of us are completely wrung out and exhausted, having flogged yourself to death to try and do that. And some of us have also had to do that whilst experiencing significant tension in the church as well. Competing views, or to go back into the building or not to go back into the building, to sing or not to sing, to mask or not to mask, and as I said before, to even to be or not to be, actually, because it's been existential. And some of the conflicts that we as a regional team have experienced in your churches would not have happened had it not been for the coronavirus. For many years we've been able to brush some of these tensions under the carpet, but now in times of heightened anxiety, it doesn't take much for people to fall out with one another and stick the boot in. I really didn't like that, people, for years. Now, it's my chance. It hasn't taken much, has it? In peacetime, it might not have happened as Josh told me the other day. I thought it was a good line, Josh. It's been like a greenhouse. Both weeds and fresh shoots have grown up together. It's a hot house. So I hope you've been blessed in these last couple of days away. I hope you've had a chance to at least recharge and renew a little bit. But do, please, go on looking after yourselves. We may, and I repeat, may, and I say this having been pinged at least 3 times in the last 2 days. I hope no one else is carrying COVID right now. We might be seeing glimmers of life after the pandemic. But please never forget that traumatised communities, and we have been through a period of trauma, traumatised communities only start to recover once they feel safe and secure. As long as the threat remains, it is very difficult to start rebuilding something new. So whilst we do have a lot more hope than what we did have, and I am more hopeful, and as a natural pessimist, that's a good sign, there may still be some bumps along the road. So watch out, you may be caught unawares. And I would urge you, friends, Leah's already talked about C&D, practice good boundaries, good discipline, good self-care. If you need help, ask, all right? Please ask. However, as I thought about what to share with you today, I felt strongly led to consider what next? What next? What next for the church? What next for us as we move from BC to AD after distancing? That's an old one, sorry, I used that 2 years ago. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because as Lynn Green said to us in her talk, which is still available on our YouTube channel, at our online AGM, Lynn Green, our General Secretary, we do need to recover and we do need to look after ourselves, but we also need to look at what God wants to do in and through our communities as we emerge from the shadows, blinking into the sunlight of a new dawn. A different era, perhaps, and we have changed. Because if there's one thing we all need to recognise, and I've seen this in every single church I have visited these past 6 years in this role, we have a desperate need for God to do a new thing in our day. A desperate need. And the pandemic has been, in terms of impact on our institution and our people, like a wrecking ball, really. Yes, there has been great innovation and ministry offered to people in adversity, and all of you have worked your socks off, but in real terms, what it's done to the majority of our churches is caused an increased pace of decline in the people who are coming along. Indeed, some have said that it has fast-forwarded our overall decline 10 years, what we've experienced. To be honest, for many of our churches, we're now at the do or die point. And I'm talking big churches too. I won't get you to put your hands up, actually, and say if your churches are now smaller, either in attendance or membership, than they were in 2019, but to hazard a guess, I wouldn't be surprised if they were. You might still have similar numbers of members, maybe you just haven't got round to editing the membership list. Governance, hey! Do you know, I was at West Croydon trying to do a church meeting before Christmas. We were trying to delete 60 members off the list, and we couldn't get a quorum to actually have the meeting to delete the members. We were going to reduce our quorum from 54 to 43. This is a church which has 270 people on the books, but really only has about 130 people there now. Yes, they had a church split 2 years ago. It's tricky, isn't it? On Twitter a few months ago, I was reading a thread from Anglican ministers who were lamenting that very situation. They were all going through, well, you know, 2 years ago we had 80, and now we've got 30. Where have they gone? Moved away. Some have died. Some have just decided, church, well, I don't really need it anymore, actually. In fact, I'm beginning to think, friends, that Zoom and YouTube services, whilst a lifeline to us to remain connected, have increased our risk of consuming church. We already were a bunch of consumers, or we are. We're deliverers of the things that they're consuming. But that's accelerated that. I just like to watch telly in my pyjamas now. Tune into another channel next week. They're really good. Their backdrop's much better. Their online mixing's much better. Some are saying, are they going to come back? Yes, for some, yeah, I'd agree, online church has been a blessing. I've been told of at least one minister who was able to testify to one of their people who couldn't come to church because they were disabled in person, because they were so fatigued or they suffered from chronic fatigue or ME or something like that, that actually engaging online is the first time they felt properly included in church life. So I know there was two sides to that story, but we've got to think about it, haven't we? And then there's the crisis of volunteering. Loads of our people have decided to stand down and they're not coming back. Being honest, whilst our association has seen very few closures over the last few years, only 3 since I came into this role, and one of those was a rebirth, I suspect we are going to see a lot of reorganisation, closures, mergers, replants over the next couple of years, and nationwide we're already seeing that. And sometimes, much of the time, that's the right decision. If the assets can be reinvested in new works of mission and ministry, let's be honest, friends, if we were planting churches today, we wouldn't necessarily have the same map as we did before. But I'm not interested in just squirreling money, okay? I'm not like the United Reformed Church. Those of you who are in there's a few people here who know exactly what I'm going to say. The United Reformed Church in Thames North Synod alone have over £30 million in the bank. And they're closing churches almost on a weekly basis, it feels. I know, because Rapley's, our surveyors, also represent them. Ruth, we pray for them to give you money.
They did.
They have. They do. Because you do wonder, you can't take it with you, as they say. What are you going to do with it? Because there's nobody here to spend it. Norman will like this talk. He's always talking to me about that. How did we do it? What are we going to spend it on? There's no point in just squirreling it for a tomorrow that is not going to come. So we have a deep need, friends, to grasp this moment and discern what we do next. We really do. And that is our challenge, isn't it? How do we do that, transitioning our churches to something else, when, yes, we still have a lot of people in our flocks who are quite happy to go back to normal, pre-COVID. One of the things I've regularly preached about, if you've had me to visit, is that question, what shape will the next move of God take? Because I do believe, friends, that the Lord hasn't finished with us in Northern Europe. Amen? Amen. Amen. Steady. But we've got to think about, are we willing for him to speak and to move again? Old wineskins, new wineskins, all of that. It might not look like what's gone before. In fact, it probably won't, because that's the history of the church. It's taken a move of God for something new to start, and often people have left, actually, started a new denomination, and then it gets stuck. That's what happens. We're an institutional being. As Carol mentioned at communion on Monday evening, Jesus opened his disciples' eyes on the road to Emmaus. They didn't recognise him. It's always a strange passage, that one, isn't it? You think, what? But that maybe, as I've always read it, they just couldn't overcome the fact they thought he was dead. So they didn't recognise him. It's amazing, isn't it? He was sitting there. And then when he prays, breaks bread, what? oh, sometimes that's a bit like us, isn't it? We've put Jesus in a box and we've said that's all he does. That's it. That's the limit of my revelation. It's like those people who've had, that amazing conversion experience. You know who I'm talking about, who became a Christian at university or through a camp and they never learn any more for the rest of their lives. And that's it. One revelation. And they've got stuck. What can Jesus say to us? Because it takes revelation to break our blindness. And for me, this speaks about attentiveness. Being attentive to the signs of the times. That's the title of this talk this morning. The signs of the times. Being willing to receive a new revelation. And both Hayley and Robert, in their own very different ways, actually, have asked us to do that. I didn't know what they were going to speak about. And it's interesting how it actually is resonating with what I'm about to share with you. To take a listening posture, to watch, to pray. As I read from that passage at the story at the start, from Elijah, there are many lessons we could take from the story of Elijah, isn't there? So many stories about that prophet's life and ministry that resonates with people in leadership. It's difficult to settle on one. He was certainly a character, and there are innumerable stories about leadership, anointing, facing adversity, depression even, despair. Perhaps he's a man for our time. And I heard Simon Goddard, who's one of the union's pioneer ambassadors, mention this passage briefly the other week. Core leadership team for the union, and I immediately thought, now that's what I want to say today, actually, to us. Which is basically looking to discern the sign of the times. You may well have preached on this story before, so I'm not going to linger on the final exegetical points. But here is Elijah prophesying about and praying for the long-awaited rain that would break the lengthy drought that he had also prophesied about earlier on in chapter 17. Of course, this is now coming after the great showdown with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. And here he is earnestly praying on the mountain in faith and sending out his servant to observe for the signs of the approaching storm. And 7 times this servant is being sent out, coming back, it's not there, Gov. Keep going. And finally he sees the emerging clouds. And then suddenly he jumps up and he goes and instructs Ahab that he must get a move on, otherwise he's going to be overtaken by this storm. And then in this really amusing moment, he turns into this sort of supernaturally empowered prophetic avenger, Quicksilver, or something like that, or if you're a DC universe, turns into the Flash and runs off ahead of the chariot. He's given the power at that moment that he needs. Now for me, this speaks into our situation in 3 ways, I feel. Elijah demonstrates prayerful faith, humble faith, bowing low, head between his knees, on the ground, earnestly seeking God, relying on others to do the watching though. Interesting. He sends out the sentinel to look for the move of God. It's a team effort. And then power given at the right time, overcoming the weakness. I don't know about you, I need something to overcome my weakness. Does anyone need power? So 3 things I just want to share with you this morning. We'll have a bit of chance to chat, and then we'll have a little bit of interaction at the end. So firstly, prayer and seeking God. Now when I consider our current situation, looking for God to do a new thing, we do have to be prayerfully discerning. Now this shouldn't come as a total shock to us Baptists, as we should love a little bit of prayerful discerning. Isn't that what we're supposed to be about, really? It's just a shame that when we talk about discernment, we're always talking about the budget, or tea bags, or paint. And I firmly believe that the local, starting with the pastor, is about locally discerning the mind of Christ. And I believe firmly that that will hold the key to the shape of future mission and ministry to London. Local. And we've deliberately called this conference Reaching Out Beyond because there is a deep need, friends, for us to realise that our previous reliance on old Christendom models of church and ministry will only get us so far in the new chapter. I really believe that. It's broken, friends. It's broken. And indeed, I have a strong sense in my heart that what we have previously deemed to be successful ministry, inverted commas, in this country might be about to change. And I think it already is changing, actually. And we've seen that through the pandemic. What do I mean by that? Well, late 20th and early 21st century success, in Christian terms, has been about, let me speculate for a moment, creating a polished, attractional church. Preferably full. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not criticising people like Holy Trinity Brompton and Hillsongs and the like, but the pandemic has hit these places the hardest. They really have. It really has. And at the end of the day, what these churches have been best at over the last few years is pooling Christians in one place and, for want of a better word, entertaining them. And I use that word deliberately. I know it's provocative. I know there are reasons why people go to these places. And I've sat in symposiums years ago talking about this, really. And some people go, well, it's where their friends are. Yeah, I know that. That's okay. And people do need fellowship. And that's what we have done a lot of the time. They are, in some ways, the ultimate commodification of the church. Opiate for the faithful. There's another philism. Opiate for the faithful. And many of these big churches are now struggling for viability. And here is the rub. And I've seen this firsthand. If you build your ministry alone on being a slick purveyor of religious services, thank you, Eugene Peterson, the moment you can't deliver that to your flock, they will evaporate. And I've seen it. I've seen it local to where I used to minister at Witcher Lane. It's notable how the small church, kudos to Hillary as usual, has been able to be more nimbler in the pandemic because they're not carrying so much weight of ministry to the faithful. Not only that, but the models of church outreach demonstrated in many of these churches, let's be honest folks, evangelism means alpha for many churches, which has been the most dominant model of outreach for the last 30 years, is often most effective at reaching and discipling the de-churched. So people who have a presupposition pool that understand Christianity. And they may have fallen out of love with the church, they may have been raised in it, they may have walked away from it because they were bored, they may have been hurt by it, and they've come back through Alpha and they can understand it. And most of our churches have used Alpha as a discipling program. Alpha does not work as successfully, and I know there are exceptions to this. And trust me, friends, I'm not saying that God can't do the impossible. Okay, he can. But it is not as effective with the hard unchurched, the people of the generations that have no Christian background at all, primarily generations Y and Z. I do believe God can do the miraculous, but much of what we've pitched at in the last 30 years has been pitched at bored and disaffected Christians. I do not believe that the so-called Christian subculture will lead us to a new thing. In fact, it's creaking, friends. It really is. And if we're serious about moving beyond that, then we need new models, new vision, new discernment. And to me, that's primarily about local expressions of Christian community embedded in their areas, in their town, their estate, their community. And that is what we've seen at the pandemic, local church rather than consumer church. Churches of integrity and authenticity, of relationship, of knowing the people around you. Building that. And it's been notable actually how many stories I have heard, even in my own church, of believers choosing to worship locally now rather than travel miles to go to a church which has all bells and whistles. And actually, the pandemic has made people stay and actually, well, maybe this is where I should be as a Christian, worshipping and ministering in the local community. And I believe that's going to happen more and more. So, the first thing I want to say is about attentiveness and prayerfulness is vastly important about what you are thinking of doing in the next chapter. What does God want us to do? But it's also a team effort. And it doesn't just come from you, the minister. And I know this is a rather reader response interpretation of the text. Spurgeon would be turning his grave right now, as he's probably done several times over the last couple of days, actually. He must be spinning. Might have to repair his tomb again. And then the property board is responsible for repairing Spurgeon's tomb. There you go. That's a prophetic thing in itself. But look at Elijah here. He sends his servant out to observe the signs of the coming storm. The sentinel goes out. The pastor is praying. The prophet is praying, earnestly seeking God. Go and look for the signs. Go and look for the signs, he's saying. And for me, this speaks of the need to rely on other people in our communities to observe the signs of the times. What do they see? It might not be you or me that gets the first glimpse. Because we are of a certain generation. We're professional Christians. I know we're not. But let's be honest. Some of us can be very institutional. Even me. I'm quite happy Hayley's around, actually, ribbing me about K-pop and QR codes. I do like McFly, though. Good tune. Sorry, Darren's about to walk out. He used to have respect for me. Sorry. It might not be us that gets the first glimpse of the new thing. And that again speaks to our Baptist life. The best things, actually, I've ever seen in ministry as a local church pastor have been those initiatives which have grown up through regular members seeing the signs of God at work, and I have watered it and facilitated it. I am here to build God's people up for works of service. Ephesians chapter 4. That's what we're all to do. It's not just about me seeing the signs and telling others what the signs are. It's not the highway code. It's them going out to look. And I think that means us being able and willing to hear the voices of people who might have something to say that come from a different cultural or generational background to our own. Let's be honest, all of us get our context. Most of us are Generation X or Boomers, or even a few builders maybe. Listening to the voices of the child, the young person, the young adult, accommodating them rather than them having to accommodate us, which is what we've done for years, let's be honest. Younger leaders, who are we investing in? We had a group talking about that last week. Where are the ones and twos in our churches? What can we do to foster those younger leaders who are going to lead this movement after we have gone? The things that they are interested in, those folks, the things that they are interested in, as we have heard these last 2 days, are likely to be different to the concerns that many of our existing members have in our churches. We don't talk about the stuff that's important to them. Questions of justice, the environment, the socio-economic challenge, the local issue. This ties in directly with what Hayley and Robert were saying to us. Hayley talked to us about integrity and authenticity, thoughtfulness and fairness, not a Sunday school faith. Who is on the outside? Asking the question, why? Why are we doing this? It's a very inquisitive generation, the one that next comes. Why? Why are you doing it? Why? It's so annoying. You know, at the end of the day, as you know, I'm a recovering task-oriented manager, and I've spent the last 20 years trying to be a people-oriented manager. You know, it's like, oh, we've got the church tidy, why do we have to let anyone in? I used to feel like that about a retailer. That's the reason why my Christian bookshop went out of business. It's nice and tidy, don't let the customers in. It's in order. I'm a very orderly person. I am. Gets messy. Oh, messy. Oh no. Some of those things that have been said the last couple of days, honestly, I was wincing when Robert went, action before talk. I'm thinking we're going to need a bigger regional team. It's just going to be out there, sweeping up the mess, going to be mopping it up, bits of people everywhere. But he's right, because we'd spend 15 years talking about the pain, and then the church shuts, or something like that. It's true. We talk. I mean, it reminds me of when I first started doing this job, and I went to the unions meeting. It was the Baptist steering group back then, and then there's a guy, Richard Nichols, who was there. He used to be the Baptist union manager, and he was rubbing his forehead at one point in the meeting. And I said, something tells me you've talked about this before. He goes, about 35 times. You know, and it's true. We love a bit of Baptist debate, even though we're supposed to be people of action, actually. We end up being more known for our debates. The Anglicans, they go, they had a vote lately. We had a vote. Enough ribbing us about that. Sometimes we have to be decisive, friends. We have to be decisive. And both Robert and Hayley spoke of courage, didn't they? And my word, we need it. Oh dear. I bet you're thinking already, oh, that means I'm going to have to deal with that person in my church. They're going to moan at me. Robert said, concerning ourselves with the voices outside, reflecting on our history. Very interesting what Peter Oyugi said last night when we had the BMS presentation. The reason why we have so many ethnocentric diaspora churches spring up is because the indigenous evangelical churches are not welcoming. And I had that said to me by one of our colleagues 13, 14 years ago. He's not here today. Came up to me at coffee and he said, Phil, people used to get sent to my church from your old church. I'm just looking at my pastor over there. I almost cried at that point. I went, what? Really? Welcome takes work. It doesn't just happen. Can I ask you a question? Do you believe that the gospel is for all?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
How do you know that? I'm going to put one thing out there for you to consider, folks. I'm going to mention the elephant in the room, which of course is the sexuality issue. Regardless of your position on this matter of LGBTQ+, and there are a vast range of views even in this room, my word there are, you must recognise that this is a massive issue for us as a church. And regardless of the position that your church takes on it, you cannot ignore it. You cannot. If you do it at your peril. Because this issue is massive in the generations below mine. And it is actually even in our generations too, but we don't necessarily hear it. We have to engage, friends. And there are some churches out there where even if you raise it, you'll be a pariah. Even me mentioning it might make me a pariah. But it's something that we have to deal with. And some of the things that I've seen in the last 6 years, I've sat in meetings of senior leaders in our movement. and the ignorance and the complete tone deafness of some of these people, where they wouldn't know the difference between someone who is straight gay and someone who's got a transgender kid, is unbelievable. I've been shocked, actually, because it's such a taboo subject that nobody wants to talk about. Okay? The moment you start talking about it, you think, oh, that means we have to register for same-sex marriage. No. It means you have to engage with the community that is around us. I'm not saying, and indeed, this is where the localism of Baptists is brilliant. Your expression of how you engage with that is down to you and the discernment of the local church. And I'm open to what you do. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to say you must discern what God is calling you to do. But what I would say is that we have to get educated and we have to express the grace of the gospel to all. Amen? Amen. We have to make people welcome. And the fact is, there have been awful things done in the name of the church to people who are LGBTQ+. Do you know that? I hope you've seen that. Some of the most painful experiences of my ministry in the local church have involved that kind of thing. And I've sat in local mental hospital with a black young man who was suicidal because he was same-sex attracted. I'm not saying what he's doing now, but he was that conflicted within because of his upbringing. This is a guy who was, 6'5", basketball player, ripped. Not what you think. Unbelievable, actually. We don't know what is going on with him. So we have to look, and we have to use our eyes to see the signs of the times. So whatever you think, please don't ignore the voices around you. Like what Robert was saying, listening to the concerns of young people. I love that video where people were pulling on the balaclavas and basically going to break into this strip club. I thought, oh, that's very provocative. Just imagine. We've had some ministers arrested, they've taken direct action. That would be a difference, wouldn't it? So don't bury your head in the sand for fear of causing upset in your fellowship, because the chances are people are already talking about it anyway, actually. I know we always have the armchair disciplinarians whose lives have worked out absolutely perfectly in every single way. All of their kids are Christians, all of them are employed, and they've had 2 kids and half a dog. Well, the people like that, basically, they just go, oh, this is fine, don't worry about it. But then the ones whose lives have been a bit more complicated, they're a little bit less quick to judge. So looking to the sentinels to spot the signs of the move of God. Can we do that? And then finally, when the sign appears, God anoints Elijah with the power that he needs. Now, I'm sure when I say some of this to you, you're going, oh, no way, I can't face this, Phil. All of us are very tired, and please don't take this talk to me of trying to give you more things to do. I'm the last person who would want to do that. Indeed, as Ken Benjamin told us a couple of years ago, some of this requires us stopping doing certain things so we can do the things we should do. Discerning and distilling, remember? Discerning the mind of Christ, distilling down what we're doing to something that he wants us to do for this age. Woe betide the person who tries to stop doing the elderly lunch club, or the coffee morning, or the sisterhood. Strongholds. You'll get it. People have died for less. Courage. It means us repositioning ourselves and looking to the people who we are going to listen to rather than the people who we've always listened to, perhaps. In this story, the prayerful faith, the watching for the sign, leads to God doing a new thing and pouring out his Spirit on his servant so much that he turns into this prophetic Usain Bolt. We can run, but only in God's power. Amen? We know that transformation only comes when God comes and does it, don't we? Yes? You can't transform anyone's life, can you? You can't. I can't. I can go till I'm blue in the face. But if people don't want to change, they're not going to change. We have to watch for God's power to anoint and transform. But the things go together. The prayer, the watching, and the power. Let's not run into the wall. You know, we don't want to run down a blind alley. I'm quite good at that too, actually, even in the union. And that's my hope, you know, that our prayerful discernment will lead to God renewing us all in ministry. Amen? That we will have the power to experience and live within this new move of God. We need power and authority to deal with the traditional issues that we're facing. Some people have said to me, so Phil, could you just tell us how to sort these churches out? How do I deal with that person? Yeah, well, you do have us, you know. We can come down, I can send Winston. He's great at upsetting people. I sometimes say to him, go gently this time, okay? It's great because he makes me look so nice. As I said. But it's true, you know, some of us are dealing with ingrained traditions and power brokers in our churches, which we do need to pray for. Sometimes we need to pray for the blessed subtraction. There's another philism. But it's true. Sometimes people need to move on, and we've seen some of that as well, haven't we, in some of our churches. That, you know, we've had one or two churches where there's been such conflict that actually some people have just got to go somewhere else. And I don't like that as a pastor. I really don't. And it really hurts, actually. But sometimes it's the right thing if God's going to do a new thing in our day. And it's very painful, because actually a lot of the people who do hold our churches, and I'm thinking of those, you know, church secretaries and whatnot, many of them are very well-meaning, actually, but they just can't see it. They can't see that they've become completely stuck. So we need to pray into that, and we need confidence and authority to lead. To lead. And I believe it can and will happen. Not running back to normal, but running towards the new thing. Amen? Amen. Amen. Okay. I'd like us to